Elias's sedan, a relic of better days, sputters and rolls to a stop beside a cabin, swallowed whole by a towering pine forest that stretches endless into shadow. The air hangs dense and still, heavy with the sharp tang of pine needles, the musk of damp earth, a silence so deep it presses against his ears like a living thing. He climbs out, stiff from the long drive, weary in his bones, a writer who hasn't written a decent word in months, chasing a spark that's long gone cold.
Finally, quiet? Maybe too quiet.
He stands there a moment, staring at the cabin, its weathered planks, its sagging roof, its windows dark and dull like unblinking eyes peering back. This is his escape, his last-ditch effort, a place to drown out the city's clamor that choked his words dry. He grabs his bag, leather frayed at the seams, heavy with notebooks full of scratched-out failures, and clutches his laptop under one arm. A lifeline, a burden. His boots hit the porch, boards creaking loud under his weight, a groan that echoes through the trees. He fumbles for the key, hidden under a mossy stone, cold and rough against his fingers, and twists it in the lock. The door resists, then gives, groaning slow as it swings open into gloom. Inside, the cabin is bare, a husk of a place. Dusty shafts of light creep through grimy windows, spilling faint over a hearth gone cold, a kitchen corner with a rusted sink, a bed sagging in the middle, its springs worn thin. Elias drops his bag with a dull thud, sets his laptop on a wobbly table scarred with old cuts, and lets his eyes drift to the pines outside, swaying in a breeze he can't hear. This is it, his retreat, his prison, his chance to claw back what he's lost. He sinks into a chair, the wood creaking under him, and stares at the laptop screen. Blank, white, a void that mocks him every day.
Not bad. Better than the city. Better than nothing.
Back in the city, the noise never stopped. Cars screaming, voices shouting, deadlines pounding at his skull, until the stories he once spun turned to ash. He'd sit in his apartment, pen frozen, mind racing nowhere, the weight of failure growing heavier each night. This cabin, found in a faded ad online, promised solitude, a cure for the block that's choked him for half a year. Now, here, the silence is louder than the chaos he fled. It hums low in his chest, a presence he can't name, wrapping around him like the forest itself. Night creeps in fast, the forest swallowing the last of the day. Elias types under a lamp's weak glow, its bulb buzzing faint, words trickling out slow, forced onto the screen like blood from a cut. Then it comes. A hum, soft at first, low, rippling through the air. The lamp flickers, once, twice. Shadows stretch and twist across the walls, bending into shapes that don't fit. He freezes, fingers hovering, breath catching.
Old wiring, that's all, right?
He shakes it off, types on, stubborn, determined to make this work. But the hum grows louder, a pulse now, steady, insistent, vibrating through the table, the floor, into his hands. He stops, head snapping up, eyes sharp. There, on the floor, the mantle's figurine, small, wooden, carved with a face too worn to read, lies fallen, alone, out of place in the stillness.
Didn't touch that.
He rises, slow, knees stiff, crosses the room and picks it up, cold to the touch, heavier than it looks. He sets it back on the mantle, careful, deliberate, his eyes sweeping the dark corners, narrowing as they search for something, anything. The hum fades, soft, retreating, but the silence, it shifts, turns heavy, thick, coils around him like a rope tightening slow. Elias lies in the sagging bed, restless, the silence of the cabin pressing down like a weight on his chest, thick and unyielding after the day's quiet. His eyes trace the ceiling, rough-hewn beams swallowed by shadow, the kind of dark that feels alive, watching. That hum from earlier, it lingers, faint, a thread stitched into his ears, buzzing soft beneath the stillness. Then it comes, scratching, sharp and sudden, clawing through the wall beside him, a sound like nails dragging slow across wood, deliberate, insistent.
What now?
He bolts upright, breath shallow, fumbles for the flashlight on the nightstand, its metal cold against his clammy hand. The beam cuts through the gloom, shaky, finds the wall, old planks weathered gray, and there, a crack, thin as a hair, running jagged through the grain. He stares, heart thudding loud in his ears, louder than the hum, louder than the night. From his bag, he grabs a screwdriver, rusted, a tool he packed for no reason he can name, and wedges it into the crack. The wood resists, groans, splinters under his push, revealing a hollow behind it. Dark, dusty, a space that shouldn't be there. He leans in, flashlight trembling, the beam catching something, movement, a glint, then stillness. It's porcelain, cracked and faded, a doll, small, slumped in the shadows, its blank eyes staring up, unblinking, locked on him. Dust clings to its chipped face, its tangled hair, its dress torn and stained. He reaches in, slow, hesitant, fingers brushing the cold surface, and pulls it free. A chill sinks deep into his skin, sharp, like ice biting bone.
Where'd you come from?
He turns it over in his hands, the doll rigid, lifeless, yet heavy with something he can't place. An age, a presence, a secret carved into its fractures. The flashlight flickers just once, and then a creak, soft, dry, escapes its mouth. A sound no doll should make, a sound that stops his breath. He freezes, eyes wide, staring at its cracked lips, waiting, dreading. Then it comes, a whisper, faint, cold, slicing through the hum like a blade through fog, clear as his own name.
Elias.
The doll sits on the nightstand now. He doesn't remember putting it there, but there it is, staring, its blank gaze boring into him, unrelenting. The hum from before, that soft thread, it swells, builds slow into static, sharp and jagged, a hiss that fills the room, prickles his skin. He pulls the blanket tighter, eyes darting, but the sound, it's everywhere, inescapable, clawing at the edges of his mind.
Leave me alone, please.
He presses his hands to his ears, but the static burrows deeper. A whine now, high and piercing, and the doll, its face, it shifts, subtle, a twitch in the cracked porcelain, a shadow moving where no light falls. A whisper cuts through again, threading the noise, low, deliberate. A voice that knows him, that's waited for him.
Your fear. We claim it.
He gasps, head snapping to the wall. It pulses, alive, dark lines swirling across the wood, twisting into shapes, eyes, mouths, hands, watching, reaching, mocking him. The flashlight clatters to the floor, beams spinning wild and the static roars deafening, a storm inside his skull. He staggers back, breath ragged, heart slamming against his ribs.
This isn't real.
He lunges for the doll, hands shaking, grabs it, cold, too cold, and shoves it back into the wall's hollow, desperate, slamming the plank shut, sealing it in. His fingers tremble, nails digging into the wood, chest heaving. But the hum, it stays, soft, persistent, a promise it's not done with him yet. Dawn breaks, gray and thin, light seeping slow through the pines, casting long skeletal shadows across the cabin's weathered face. Elias bursts from the door, wild-eyed, breath fogging in the chill, the night's static still ringing in his ears, a ghost that won't let go. He stumbles down the porch, boots slipping on dew-slick boards, the forest looming around him. Tall, silent, a wall of green and black that swallows sound, swallows hope. He reaches his car, hands fumbling with the keys, the metal cold, slick with sweat.
Need to get out.
The engine sputters, coughs, then roars to life, a jagged sound that tears through the stillness. He peels out, gravel spitting under the tires, the cabin shrinking in the rearview mirror. But its weight, its pull, it clings to him, heavy as the air he can't shake. He He drives, fast, too fast, the dirt road winding through trees that lean in, branches scraping the roof like fingers testing his resolve. He reaches town, a speck of a place, a handful of shops, a diner humming with life, voices, normalcy. He parks, steps out, legs shaky, the static a faint echo now, a scar in his mind. Inside the diner, he grips a coffee mug, steam curling up, the chatter of strangers a lifeline, people laughing, forks clinking, a radio droning soft in the background. He breathes, slow, tries to ground himself, but his eyes drift to the window, smudged glass reflecting the street. There, a figure, tall, gaunt, eyeless, stands in the frame, still as death. Then gone, a blink, a trick.
It's following me.
He drops coins on the counter, voice tight, strides back to the car. Town's no sanctuary, no escape. The drive back is slower, dread pooling in his gut, the cabin looming ahead, its silhouette sharp against the pines, its silence deeper, darker, a mouth waiting to swallow him whole. Night falls again, fast, brutal, the cabin reclaiming him. Elias sits on the bed, hunched, the doll back on the nightstand. He didn't bring it there, didn't touch it, but it's there, staring, its cracked face a mask of patience. The static hums, steady, a drone that fills the room, seeps into his skin, his skull, a sound he can't outrun. The wall beside him swirls, alive, dark patterns twisting, faces now grotesque, mouths gaping, eyes hollow, mocking him, daring him.
I can't fight it.
He reaches out, slow, hand trembling, grabs the doll. Its touch stings, cold fire racing up his arm, into his chest. The static floods in, a tide, overwhelming. His fears flash before him, stories he wrote, stories he buried, all dissolving into black, into nothing. He sees the city again, his failure, his silence, but it's warped, twisted, the doll's voice threading through, claiming it all.
You are us now.
His grip tightens, then slackens, the doll slipping from his fingers, hitting the floor with a dull clink. His eyes fade, blank, glassy, staring at nothing. The room stills, the static softens, a lullaby now, and the doll's smile, cracked and wide, fills the silence, the last thing left. Days later, a new car rolls up, tires crunching gravel, a young couple stepping out, laughing, bags swinging in their hands, oblivious, eager, drawn to the cabin's false warmth. The forest watches, still, patient, its shadows long and hungry. They cross the threshold, voices bright, eyes scanning the cozy lie of the place, the hearth, the table, the mantel where the doll sits, waiting, its smile sharp, knowing. A hum stirs, faint, low, hungry, a thread weaving through the air, reaching for them next.